I'd like to call to order the regular council afternoon meeting for Monday, April 29th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Corporate officer, any late items? No late items. Can I get approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor? That carries. Consent agenda. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two attachments, both I and J.
Okay, those two letters.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll go down to number 9 on the agenda. Anyone else? I can get approval of the agenda, consent agenda as amended. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor? That carries. And moving on to delegations. So if the delegation would like to just come up to the podium, please. And I'll just turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Your worship and councillors, we thank you for this opportunity. We represent Summerland residents advocating to restore Peach Orchard Beach Park, POP. Our presentation will highlight POP, share and review research, and explore next steps. POP is a beautiful spot. It is integral to our community's well-being and is packed with recreational options and amenities from a dog beach to a covered gazebo. This prime lakefront park has been the perfect gathering place for community members of all ages, from our very young to our retired seniors. In the past, POP has been used for scheduled events, classes, family activities, and impromptu gatherings for residents and tourists alike. The park is a gem, and it is proud to be a gem to be proud of, and was designed as a multi-use community park.
We spent many hours researching OCP and Parks and Recreation Master Plan to assess how a dog park at Peach Orchard Park aligns with the plan's priorities. While DOS commits to providing space for dogs and their owners, none of the plans indicate that POP is suitable for a dog park. The RDOS plans, OCP, and Parks Master Plan demonstrate a strong commitment to environment, waterfront preservation, protecting public lands and parks, and maintaining biological diversity. One of the council's strategic priorities for 2022 to 2026 is to enhance our quality of life. How does a dog park align with this strategy? Article was provided to you on exposure to chronic barking and its effects on public health. Constant barking inside and outside the fence negatively impacts the public. When comparing dog park strategies with other areas in BC, it is clear that dog parks are not allowed in residential areas, on prime lakefront land, near playgrounds or sports fields, and in environmentally sensitive areas. The constant noise and nuisance of the fenced dog park at POP resulted in a negative impact on residents, affecting over 75 households, as well as the park users. It led to the loss of events and family activities in the park. The loss of parking due to increased dog park activity prohibited many visitors from accessing the park. The turf quickly turned to mud, and the environmental impact of such activity on a sensitive waterfront has not been studied. The increased dog activity inside and outside the fence, especially on the waterfront and Rotary Beach, continued without enforcement and deterred many from spreading a blanket in areas where dogs had defecated. The potential effect of viruses and parasites on public health has not been addressed.
Many families live within the natural amphitheater above the park. The large dog park has been forced inside one of our community parks zoned for everyone. Activities for the greater number of community members have been terminated, affecting their needs and quality of life. The delicate grassy land sits upon a floodplain. There is considerable damage despite extraordinary efforts to mitigate. Moreover, there remains pressing questions regarding dog control measures, the adequacy of bylaw support, the extent of public consultation, effects on ecosystem, and alignment with district planning initiatives.
We received an overwhelming response to our online petition, both in terms of the number of respondents and the quality of their feedback. The Restore Peach Orchard petition collected 1,844 signatures to date. In comparison, the Dog Owner Association petition utilizing the same platform has 577 supporters. Clearly, Summerland has spoken. Copies of the comments made on our petition site were shared with you. Common themes among the responses are POP is an inappropriate location for a fenced dog park. Dog park does not belong on our most precious waterfront property, and the fenced dog park should be a standalone facility that does not interfere with established park activities and residences.
Exploring options within the ALR land or inviting proposals from public land owners for larger standalone dog park would showcase creative leadership and action without compromising valuable parkland resources. Canyon View has been suggested as one of the large dog park possibilities. Approval for a non-farming use on ALR land takes 60 to 90 days. If acted on, the issue of a fenced dog park could have been resolved. The trial period has ended. It is evident that POP is not suitable for a fenced large dog park. The community has voiced concerns and patience is wearing thin. Summerland citizens were denied access to their usual park activities at POP for a year. Summer is upon us. It is time to dismantle the fence and return POP back to all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, any questions for our delegates? Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. This is to our corporate officer. Corporate officer, it was brought up an online petition of over 1,800 signatures or respondents. Does an online petition, is that actually a petition that the District of Summerland will recognize, consider it was put across the world? And there was responses on that petition. I don't know where this is, but I will sign it. So my question is, there might have been 600 from the Dog Association, but they were from the Dog Association in Summerland and not a worldwide petition.
Through the matter, Councillor Patton. So the community charter outlines that a petition is presented to council when it's presented to the corporate officer. So I have not seen this petition. It also says that it must include the full name and residential address of each petitioner. And I believe the intent of the legislation for this is so that when council does receive this, they can determine the relevancy of those who signed.
Thank you, corporate officer.
Okay, council, any questions for the delegation? Councillor Betts.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming here today as an organized group representing the views of some Summerlanders who don't agree with the dog park being at that location. Just to say that, you know, we heard strongly from the Summerland Dog Owners Association previously, and I would just like to acknowledge that when people come together as a larger group or when they collect signatures, and you know, I see where Councillor Patton is coming from, but seeing as if it was the same kind of methodology for collecting those signatures, I can see that there may have been the similar flaws between the two. But I think that it's important to kind of come together and share your voice and share with council your opinions. We are, of course, just an elected group of your peers. So this has been a hard issue in Summerland. It's quite divisive. People are really passionate about the dog parks, and it's not only about dogs, it's about people and people coming and using the spaces, but it's also about finding the right balance for our neighbors. So I just wanted to say that it's been a challenging issue for all along because everybody just cares a lot about this space, I think. So I just want to thank you for coming together and coming with an organized presentation. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Betts. Don't see anyone else, so thank you for your presentation. And this wouldn't be dealt with right now. So. We now move on to the public comment opportunity for any agenda item. We have 15 minutes, 2 minutes per speaker. If anybody would like to come up? Yep.
Hi, Council. Brad Besler. I want to speak to agenda item 7.9. On April 12th, I applied to speak as a delegation at this council meeting on behalf of the Summerland Watchdogs, which is an informal group of local residents that believes in holding local government accountable. I was going to speak about the importance of community engagement in Summerland because there is a feeling in the community that this council is not listening to residents. But I was denied that opportunity by CAO Graham Stott. I've attended almost every council meeting during this term. I have never seen a delegation be rejected before. And some delegations have very little connection to Summerland, and some delegations speak for up to 30 minutes. As you know, over 90% of the time, it's just me in the gallery watching these council meetings. I'm not getting paid anything to be here. I show up because I care about Summerland. This is the town I grew up in, okay? So to be singled out by the CAO as the only person who isn't able to speak as a delegation is very disappointing. If the shoe was on the other foot, I would let you all speak as a delegation. So I would appreciate if council would give me that same opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to come and speak? Just.
My name is Marilyn Hanson. I want to say that I'm not anti-dog. I had a dog, but I don't think the permanent dog park on a public beach area is appropriate. There already is a very nice swimming beach area for dogs at Sanoka, and lots of people go there, and then they go across the road and let their dogs run on the trail along the Trout Creek. And they're very respectful. If their dogs seem a little out of control, they put them on a leash again. We should not be using our waterfront parks as permanent dog parks. There are other areas in this town for that. Dale Meadows is one, and now that Giants Head School is being decommissioned, there are huge playing fields up there. I go to a dog park in Vancouver very often with my daughter's dog, and it's a large treed area where dogs can really run. It's not on a waterfront, and it's not necessary to put our dog park there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just come up to the podium, ma'am.
We signed up, so you should have my name, Willie Petrus. Mayor, council members, a year ago, in response to a persistent lobby group, a temporary fence was set up in the north end of Peach Orchard Park. It surprised many. It immediately removed half of the grassy parkland from public use and ceded to dogs and dog owners who enter the area through 2 double gates. This enclosed area has been referred to as a dog park, but in reality, it's a fenced dog run within the park where people stand around and lob balls at running, often barking dogs. Most arrive and leave by car. For most dogs, confinement in a restricted area is stressful and arousing. For most people, dog barking is disruptive and irritating. It's been called a monstrosity and an outrage by some. It engendered controversy from the day that the fence went up. Last fall, the mayor asked staff as part of budget considerations for an estimate to make the dog run permanent. That cost, including parking and a 5-foot perimeter silver metal fence, comes to $220,000. $220,000 tax dollars to make a controversial and divisive dog pen permanent, and removes as well half of the park from public use. A petition proved that an overwhelming majority want Peach Orchard Park to be restored to its original purpose for all. By the way, it's the same Change.org organization that had the petitions for those numbers that was quoted by Lisa. One councillor declared that complaints are legitimate but overstated. Another said, the positives for utilizing this area for the dogs outweigh any negative comments that have been received. These remarks belittle those who made researched presentations and also the petitioners who are genuinely concerned about the future of the park, especially the contamination and degradation of the soil. It is now before the summer that council should make the right decision and take down the fence. It's been long enough. Peach Orchard belongs to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Sir?
Hello, my name is Mark Boche. I should be on the list of speakers. There may be, I guess, a few things I want to talk about is there may be some misconceptions a little bit about the noise that residents in the neighborhood are experiencing. There's been a fair amount of research done about noise and dog parks and stuff like that. If you look on the internet and stuff like that. Generally speaking, dogs bark at 80 to 110 decibels. The loudest dog barking ever recorded, I think, was near 113 decibels. Noise over 90 decibels can lead to hearing loss. And it's been alluded to that, there's a bit of a natural amphitheater there where the residents above live due to the cliffs. There's a lot of research on noise, travel, and directions, how sound is funneled, how it can reverberate up against the cliff face. And I will agree that perhaps not all residents in the neighborhood perhaps agree in terms of the degree of noise and the discomfort that they may experience. Some of that is a personal choice. And I can appreciate you guys also have a difficult decision to make in front of you. The thing that I guess I would like to highlight a little bit is there probably isn't a perfect location. You guys have mentioned that in the past. Alternatives have been presented. The dog park itself can be considered, I guess, a bit of a sore point for residents and for councils, and it has caused quite a bit of division. The alternative locations have been suggested on Canyon View Road. I think it's imperative that a lot of things be considered and some of that stuff be looked at. The environmental degradation that's been addressed in terms of the dog park. In the past, it's 4 years ago, I've seen comments even from the Dog Association not supporting that location due to the natural flooding. This has been a dry year, and it's obvious that those concerns raised back then have come to fruition. And I can't imagine what another wet season would do. And there's been a lot of effort to remediate that land. And I do have, I guess, a bit of an audio clip here that I'll play. This is from a resident. I don't know how it's coming through, but.
I don't think it works that well. Yeah, sorry, sir, your time is up.
Fair enough. And that's what people hear.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Some people. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to our business items now. 7.1. Who will be taking that? Renee? Director? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. Canadian audit standards require that those with recognized authority have asserted that they have taken responsibility for those financial statements prior to the issuance of the audit report. The district's auditor, BDO Canada LLP, have completed their audit work and are prepared to issue an unqualified opinion that the financial statements present fairly the financial position of the District of Summerland as of December 31st, 2023. Once council has approved the statements, BDO will formally issue their opinion. Prior to handing today's presentation over to the partner with BDO Canada, I want to briefly comment on the statements overall. The financial statements reflect a continued improvement in the financial position of the District of Summerland. Two financial indicators that I would like to highlight this afternoon are net financial assets and reserves. Net financial assets measure a municipality's ability to cover its financial liabilities with its financial assets at a given point in time. The district's 2023 financial position reflects net assets of $8.27 million, an increase of $915,000 over the previous year. District reserve funds at the end of 2023 totaled $42.2 million, which was an increase of $2 million over 2022. This increase in reserve funds is attributed to two factors. The first relates to the $19.1 million operational surplus, as these funds had been budgeted to be spent on capital projects. The second factor relates to overall capital dollars spent and specifically the use of reserve funds to pay for those acquisitions. In 2023, the district budgeted $25.9 million in capital acquisitions with $16.6 million to be funded through reserves. Actual capital spending in 2023 was $22.4 million, with $9.6 million being transferred from reserves. I'd now like to call on Mr. Piriotti to provide council with BDO's overall comments on the district's financial statements and their audit findings.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to Mayor and Council for having me here today. As was discussed, we're here to review the financial results of the District of Summerland for the year ended December 31st, 2023. I've prepared a presentation with some graphs and some key performance indicators that will cover off the review of the financial statements. But if there are any questions that you have from what you reviewed in your agenda package, I'm more than happy to answer them. And as was mentioned, we are proposing a clean audit opinion. So these statements do present fairly the results of the District of Summerland for the year ended December 31st, 2023. Now, before we go into the actual presentation of the financial statements, if you recall from last year's presentation, there was a significant new accounting standard that came in this year called asset retirement obligations. And this is for the first time that any government in Canada is required to account for any legal obligation to decommission assets at the end of its useful life. And so it does create a new $11 million liability on the financial statements. And I want to speak to that before we go into the statements so we can address these questions separately. But what's important to understand that when we look at what these asset retirement obligations are, we have three categories of AROs to deal with. One is the landfill, one is with the skate park, and the last one is buildings, more specifically asbestos within the buildings. And so on the screen there, we'll see that we have this future cost column of $26.9 million. This means that if we were to decommission all these assets tomorrow, this would be the cost to be incurred. But this isn't something that is going to be done overnight and is part of your overall asset management planning that you've been reviewing over the past number of years. So it's important to remember that these will be items that as we go and do major renovations, as the landfills fill up, that will be the time when it's dealt with, and it will be dealt with through your normal capital process. So it's not to worry that we have to spend the $11 million tomorrow. We have to have a reserve for $11 million. That's not the case here. This is just an extension of asset management planning. But the other thing that this slide highlights is that we can see that in the past, we did account for $1 million of liability on the statements because of your landfill closure costs. We're now sitting at $11 million. But that $26 million number has not changed from last year to this year. It's always been there. We just now are tracking it on the statements. So I'll pause there before we move on and just wanted to ask Mayor and Council, are there any questions on this new standard?
Which skate park is it? Is the old one or the new one? The new one, okay. Councillor Trainer.
I'm just curious, why is the skate park on there? Like, how is it different from other recreational amenities that we have?
Through the mayor. The skate park is on School District 67 land, and so we have a lease with the school district. And in that lease, at the end of the lease, there's a requirement to return the property to the original state that it was in before the skate park was erected there. Look.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, with that out of the way, we'll start to look at the actual results. So we'll first start on the statement of financial position. So this is a snapshot of all of your assets and liabilities and surplus at the end of the year. And as was mentioned, we did have an increase in our financial asset position. That's all the cash you have and cash coming in, up $2 million or $1.5 million from 51.5 to $53 million. And the main increase that we have in there is in your cash and investment position. And when we move to the statement of operations and talk about the surplus, we'll explain why we had that change there. When we look at your liability position, the liability position excluding your long-term debt with the MFA did increase from 28.5 million to 31.6 million. But your overall liability position, because we were paying down the debt, actually remained quite flat over the year. And then, as was mentioned, your net financial asset position did increase by nearly $1 million. So again, we're showing that financial growth and that money being moved into reserve funds. When we look at your overall revenue position and how you did this year, it was a very strong revenue year, $58 million of revenues versus a budget of $48.8 million. Now, it's also important to understand that we can see government transfers and grants was significantly over budget, and it came in at 11.5 million versus a budget of 6.4. 4.5 million of that was the Growing Communities Fund, which of course came out later in the year, and so that was not a budgeted item. But the other item that I did want to highlight on there, and even though the number is included in other revenues, is that your overall interest and investment income increased to just over or just under $1.3 million. It was at $400,000 last year and a budget of $160,000. And that's something that we've seen across most municipalities this year. As the Growing Communities Fund money came in, a lot of more investment activity was happening, putting that money to work. And of course, $1.3 million is significant amount of money. So it's good to see that management was able to capitalize on that. This next slide just highlights when we talk about $58 million, where the pieces of the pie come from, taxation making up a quarter of it, and then user fees and own source revenue makes up nearly half of it. Overall, on your expenses, total expenses came in at 39 million versus a budget of 44.9 million. And there weren't any significant variances or any budget overages this year. So there's not too much to talk about on this slide. And this is quite common. Your budgeting process is quite robust, and we typically don't see a lot of unexpected over expenditures with this municipality. This next slide just talks about when we say $39 million, how it's broken down between the various categories, being materials, contracted services, labor, your personnel, and that sort of thing. Now, you came in with a $19 million surplus this year. And of course, we know that you try to prepare a balanced budget every year. And this is the part where I want to remind Mayor and Council that the way you prepare your budget under the community charter requirements does not align with how these financial statements are prepared. When you prepare your budget, your capital projects are treated as an expense. If we borrow, that's treated as revenue, whereas those items show up on the statement of financial position as assets and liabilities. So we don't really see how we did against our budgets, except for when we get to this net change in financial position. So if we take that $19 million surplus, deduct our capital projects of $22.4 million, add back your amortization and depreciation, which is non-cash and not funded, we come to that net change in financial position of $915,000, which is effectively your cash surplus. Now, the one item that I really want to highlight is, as I've been now deep into presenting all of my council presentations, I've been talking about there's one set of financial statements that I've seen this year where you were able to substantially complete your capital plan. And this is the only financial statement that I've seen that on so far this year. Everybody's been falling behind. And you guys came in at 22.4 million in capital projects versus a budget of $25 million, which is quite close. We're seeing a lot of communities are spending half of what their budget is. So I really want to applaud yourselves and management in being able to execute on that. I know that there were projects that changed and then you were substituting other things in, but that's an important piece. Everybody's fighting for the same contractors. Everybody's fighting for the same materials. So if you have to juggle to make sure that you're fulfilling a full year worth of capital, you need to do that. And that's what happened this year. So I wanted to make sure that council was aware of that. And so the last stop that we're going to go to is we're going to talk about your accumulated surplus. And so when we look at your accumulated surplus, you have $162 million, which seems like a big number. And we know that's not what you have in the bank. And so your accumulated surplus is broken down into 4 major categories. But the biggest piece of that $162 million is your invested intangible capital assets of $127 million. And what that number is that if we look in the rearview mirror at what we've spent on our infrastructure since the beginning of time, less depreciation, less our debt, that is what the number is represented there. So it's like talking about the equity in your house. It's included in surplus, but it's not really there and be able to be spent, and you can't borrow against it as a municipality either. But the last item to go to is what was being spoken about earlier and just showing your reserve funds. And we can see the various reserve funds that we have and $9.8 million set aside. And I know that this part of your asset management planning, there is funds being moved there every year as well. So I'll pause there on the numbers and just open it up for any questions before we talk about the audit results.
Okay, council, any questions? Councillor Barkwell.
Not so much a question as a observation that the completion of the capital projects was a strategic goal of council and a personal goal of the CAO. And congratulations for achieving this goal and maybe being one of the few communities that have done so.
Thank you. I'll pat ourselves on the back. Anyone else? No? Carry on. Thanks.
Yep. So then the last is just speaking about the audit results themselves. As is normal course, I'd like to thank management. They did a great job of making sure that our team was fed the information we needed, and also that it was quality information so that we could evaluate the evidence and ultimately issue our unmodified audit opinion. The audit was completed on time. When I reviewed the file, it was exactly 1 month ago today. So then it just took some time to get the final changes, the asset retirement obligations into the financial statements, and then of course coming to the scheduled meeting. When we performed our audit, there was no deviations from our planned audit approach. The evidence that we obtained was in line with our expectations, and there were no deficiencies noted in your controls and your policies either. And also, we do review transactions with key management and as well with council to make sure that we don't identify any irregularities there. And I'm happy to report that there were no items identified in that testing as well. And I'll pause there for any other questions if you have in terms of how we audited and what type of work we did.
Okay, Councillor Barkwell.
Knowing you can't review everything, and matter of fact, you can't review a whole lot. I'm interested in knowing, I think we had some discussion earlier about review of control procedures. You have to put a lot of your confidence in their control procedures. And the regional district Thompson Okanagan certainly sticks in my mind, as I should everyone's, who is concerned about financial irregularities or anything like that. Didn't you have was it last year or was it this year that you sort of took a little bit closer than normal look at financial controls and how much of a look did you do this year?
Okay, through the mayor to Councillor Barkwell. So We review controls every year. There's different ways that as an auditor, we can go and gain evidence. I am a believer that if we look at controls, it gives us a greater confidence that things are operating properly throughout the year, including when we're not here. Last year, there were some specific items that caused us to take a deeper dive, in particular with payroll, to make sure that everything was being dealt with properly. But we did look at all of your controls again this year. In particular, we spend time on your procurement, your expense policies, over payroll controls, both on employee setups and terminations, as well as approval of timesheets in the overall register. We also look at the controls surrounding cash, in particular on the bank reconciliations, and making sure that those things are being reviewed in detail and that we have that there. But those are the main focus areas for controls that we look at. And to your latter question, TNRD, very near and dear to my heart, and just down the street from me, where I sit on a day-to-day basis. And, again, this is part of the reason why I want to make sure that we're looking at it. And I'm happy to report that there were no control deficiencies identified in this year's audit.
Anyone else? Councillor Peak.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Mayor. Mario, I made note that you have new software that you've used in doing your reviews and audits. I'm wondering if that has been an advantage for BDO?
Through the mayor, through to Councillor Peak. Yes, so the software, we have a suite of software that we're using, and we haven't quite gone down the AI route yet with it, doing that, but we've been using a lot of, as an example, when we go through and we're looking at payments to everybody in this room here, senior management and council, we're actually getting the source data directly from your accounting systems, and we're running it through our data analytics software to identify those items. And that's something that we've been doing for a number of years, so that, it's those types of things that help us do the searching. It's that trust but verify mentality, so that, it can't just be, okay, management, you've told us that these are all the transactions. We're actually looking in the system and doing searches to say, yes, we believe these are all the transactions.
Okay, thank you. There's no further questions. Get a motion to approve the 2023 audited financial statements. Councillor Trainer, Councillor Peak, any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Karate. Okay. Moving on, 7.2, late grant and aid request, Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of the 2024 budget process, council reviewed 20 grant and aid applications and approved a 2024 grant and aid budget of $53,000. Now, during that same process, council committed $51,221 in grant and aid funding, leaving unallocated funding for late applications of $1,779, which historically are submitted by sports teams once it's been determined whether or not they make provincials or not. So the district has received one such late application requesting the full $500 allotment, as noted in our grant and aid policy from Mr. Rob Robinson, who is our fire chief, and his annual curling bond spiel. Mr. Robinson is not here to speak to his application, but yeah, looking for a decision of council whether or not to approve that funding or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Council. Councillor Peak.
Well, as we have money available to do this kind of work, and I'd like to congratulate our fire chief on his outcome with the sports association that he was in, that I would like to see this money go forward and be allotted.
You want to put that motion on the table?
I will.
Okay, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Trainer, any discussion? Certainly, he's an ambassador for Summerland when he goes to a national championship like this, and especially when he wins the trophy and brings it home. So we can't make that conditional to the grant, I guess. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. 7.3, 2024 tax rates, Director of Finance.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So council adopted the district's 2024 to 2028 5-year financial plan. It seems like a while ago, but it was February 27th, 2024. The plan included a 5.38% property taxation revenue increase for 2024. 4.44% of that increase relates to expenditures that were committed to in previous years, with the remaining 0.94% to cover 2024 operational increases. The average residential property that is assessed at $892,562 will see an increase in taxes over last year of $112.31. The average commercial property assessed at $424,320 will see an increase in taxes over last year of $131.94. The proposed bylaw sets the property tax due date as July 5th, 2024, which is the first Friday in July, which is historically what we do here. Now, in addition to the proposed tax rates bylaw, I do want to remind residents about the changes to the homeowner grant that happened 3 to 4 years ago now. The province took over the administration of the homeowner grant program. Eligibility criteria has not changed. However, homeowners can no longer apply for their homeowner grants at Municipal Hall. They must apply directly to the province, either using the province's online system, or for those homeowners that do not own a computer, they can call the province's toll-free number, which will be on the property tax notice. We do strongly encourage homeowners to claim their homeowner grants as soon as they receive their 2024 property tax notices, and those will be mailed out after the mail-on weekend. So accompanying the tax notices will also be the 2024 tax insert, which does provide residents with numerous payment alternatives, amongst other important information. Now, residents wishing to avoid long lineups when paying their taxes are encouraged to review this insert and use an alternative payment method other than physically coming to Municipal Hall. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? No? Somebody want to bring the motion forward? Councillor Patton. That would be to read for first, second, and third time. And that a special council meeting be scheduled for 2 p.m. on May 7th to consider adoption. Yeah, second. Okay, second, Councillor Trainer. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. 7.4, 2025 budget timeline. Mr. Felinci.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report, of course, is to provide council with the proposed 2025 budget timeline. As noted in the report, the proposed timeline focuses on reviewing utility budgets at the end of October and then switching to the general fund budgets in early December. In all, there are 7 proposed meetings to specifically discuss budgets, rates, and council priorities. The first meeting is scheduled for October 30th. In addition to the budget meetings, there are 2 open houses that are scheduled. A virtual public open house will be held on November 19th to introduce the utility budgets and potential rate increases for the coming year. And additionally, the more formal general fund open house is scheduled for January 15th. And that would be at the Arena Banquet Room from 5 to 7 p.m. with all departments present to answer any questions that the public may have. And there will also be a formal presentation at that point as well. And it is staff's hope to have the 5-year financial plan adopted by council on March 4th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, these dates work for everybody? Councillor Trainer.
October 31st, would we be able to start that meeting earlier, perhaps, just because it's Halloween and some of us have children that have needs that day. So yeah, if we could go from 8 to 2, that would be great. I don't know if that works for other people. Yeah. Okay.
Do we have to dress up?
Huh?
Do we have to dress up?
And then on October 30th, which I'm totally okay with, Richard and I have a birthday that day too, so I'll bring cake for us. Anyway, I'll bring this forward if it's just okay to adjust the 8 to 2 on October 31st. I'll bring it forward.
Does that work for everybody? Yeah, Councilor
I've
Barkle?
already arranged that the director of finance should bring a cake for you.
Good.
Councilor Betts?
Thank you. Councillor Trainer, I know that we previously it had been shifted from 9 to 3, but you wanted to change it again to 8 to 2?
Yeah.
Is to our Director of Finance. Just, I drop the children off every day, so it's tricky for me to get here for 8 o'clock. Are we allowed to have a shortened day, like from 9 to 2 and add that on somewhere else? 9 to 2.
Director of Finance?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Betts and Councillor Trainer. Historically, our utility budgets normally only take 2 days. We do have that third day on November 1st. So should we keep it at 9 to 3? And if there are any overruns, or if we do need to go further into the next day, we do have November 1st available. Alternatively, yes, we can absolutely change from an 8 to 2. But historically, there's probably a good chance with the shortened timeline on October 31st, we're probably gonna bump into the Friday anyway. So if we just leave it from 9 to, you want to change it 9 to 2? Okay, we can do that, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then anyone else? So we'll just need a resolution, I think. What will the resolution be? To prove it as amended, I guess, right? Someone to bring that, Councillor Peak as amended, Councillor Van Elfen. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, that carries. I think we'll just keep moving, rather than kind of early. We're running ahead, so we'll just do the source water protection plan now, since we have our Director of Utilities here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to check that we're just a little early, so just checking that our consultants calling on Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before you today, we have the work plan for the source water protection plan, and we do have a presentation. There's Marta. We do have a presentation today. So Steve, if you don't mind pulling that up while I do an intro here. Watershed management is part of the strategic priorities of council. As part of that strategic priority, last year, staff completed the source water assessment. And we brought that to council last year. And just for your information, that was February 27th, 2023, if you wanted to look up that report. That source water assessment was the first step towards the source water protection plan, which is budgeted for this year. The council report shows the work plan in detail, but at a high level, it includes partnering with stakeholders, assessing the watershed, and planning actions. This includes forming a technical advisory committee, and the proposed participants are included on page 3 of the council report. I'm joined today by Marta Green. She's our hired gun with Associated Engineering for this project. She has a short presentation. Marta is a geoscientist and project manager with Associated Engineering Environmental Division based in Vernon. She's a UBC Vancouver graduate of hydrogeology and soil sciences, has 22 years experience. Marta recently completed a source to tap assessment for Fernie, as well as source protection plans. So the same plan we're doing here for Merritt, Whitehorse, Upper and Lower Similkameen Indian bands. So she has experience with this, and to date, it's been really good starting the project off with her. She's also on the OBWB's Water Stewardship Council and has been on the Drinking Water Committee for the BCWWA and is the Vice President of the BC Groundwater Association. So well-versed. She has family and friends in Summerland, so it's familiar here. And Marta, I'll hand it over to you for the presentation.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yes. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I had planned to be there tomorrow and just found out earlier this morning. But I am not too far away, just up in Vernon here, where I enjoy working and playing on the Silks territory. So yeah, today we will be talking about our proposed approach or work plan that I've been working with Jeremy for the Trout Creek Intake Source Protection Plan. Next slide, please. Oh, I think you did too. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So as Jeremy mentioned, we are kind of not starting off totally at the beginning. We are lucky to have had Lorette Aquatics complete a pretty good assessment of the watershed back in 2022. What we're going to be talking about today is just kind of in general what source protection objectives are all about, our approaches, how we're taking Lorette's report, the technical advisory committee we are proposing to work with, and some engagement concepts. And I do have one last slide on what this final product will look like. Before we jump in, just wanted to have this study area shown here. So this is the Trout Creek intake only, so not the Garnet watershed area or below the intake that's done through other projects. So just recap on what is this Trout Creek watershed. Some highlights of infrastructure you'd be familiar with is the Princeton to Summerland Highway. We've got 3 major dams. There's some forestry, minor agriculture around the Folder Meadow area. Recreation is mostly off-road vehicles, dirt bikes, ATVs, side-by-sides, but you do have the rail trail, so I have enjoyed mountain biking myself there. A little bit of mining exploration, and of note here is in gray, you have the Penticton Indian Reserve just south and west of your intake there. Not sure if I can show things on the slide here, but yeah, we'll carry on. Yeah, so just to recap on how drinking water is protected in BC, and this has been proven over and over again. Most recently, the biggest kind of review of this would have been in the year 2000 in Walkerton, when 7 people died and more than 2,000 fell ill. And there was a big inquiry, and they did reinforce this approach. Basically, it's usually the breakdown of more than one barrier that causes an outbreak. So in Walkerton, just a reminder, there was cows around the wells, not adequate treatment, and there was a lack of operator training and oversight. So yeah, so just in general, the ideas with the source protection plans is to identify threats to your drinking water and to recommend ways to reduce that, those threats through any of these barriers. So that all sounds a little bit fuzzy. So the next slide could hopefully be a little bit more concrete. So yeah, basically, it's to protect the excellent water quality you have. So you already have adequate treatment for protozoa, bacteria, and viruses. So those are the disease-causing pathogens or organisms that are living in a human gut, let's say, beaver fever, those types of norovirus. Those are examples of pathogens that cause us to get sick and not fun experiences. But your water treatment plant doesn't protect against every single contaminant out there, right? So there's no protection from hydrocarbons. There's no protection from algae or nutrients. And there's also, with extreme weather, you could perhaps lose your supply or have to shift things around. So those are kind of some more tangible ways of thinking about what a source protection plan can do for you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so some neat secondary objectives is just through the process and through the actions at the end. There will be some engagements with the public. So the public can become your eyes and ears, and they can then report any problems they see quicker to you. So that's like amplifying your 5 operators, let's say, to 500 or whatnot. And just also then they'll see there anytime you have people more connected, then they see the value more, right? So hopefully by them understanding all the great work you guys do to deliver drinking water, they will help you out. And yeah, I did want to add here, it does support reconciliation and connection to the land, which I'll talk a little bit more in a minute. Next one, please. Yeah, so this is the work plan. This is what we would like to ask council to approve and adopt, and then we will go forth and do this. So the first step is to recruit the members of the Technical Advisory Committee. So the LRAT report just did that internally with the staff, looking at reviewing your area, your watershed area, and she did develop some preliminary recommendations. But now is the time to bring in more people that are on the landscape, have jurisdiction over the landscape, to make sure we see the whole assessment through their lens as well. So the recruiting the TAC will be done through mayor and staff, and then I'll follow up with like a background or memo, just a little bit about the process and how they can get involved. The next step is to kind of go over the assessment, what LRAT's already done, but this time bringing everyone up to speed and also allowing everyone to bring their own contributions forward. So at the end of assess, we will have the drinking water hazards inventoried and ranked according to risk. So we'll do that through 2 workshops and a watershed tour, which I'm very excited about. So for the plan step, that's the main step, I would say, of our deliverable. And this is where, from all of those recommendations, we want to explain more what those recommendations are and how they'll actually be done. So we imagine condensing those 18 individual recommendations into, let's say, 6 programs. And then for each program, we would develop that action, the objectives, identify the lead agency. We don't always need the District of Summerland to lead everything, and then somehow create some metrics of success and prioritize. So that'll be done through separate breakout sessions, depending on the enthusiasm of our TAC members, let's say. And then the act and evaluate are the last 2 steps that we can comment in the report on how to transition, but of course it depends on the TAC and how they want to continue the programs going. Next slide, please. Right, so who is our TAC? So we haven't contacted any of these partners and stakeholders yet. So that's why it's called an example TAC, because we want council to see what we're thinking of first. So on the outside, you'll see our typical neighbors, municipalities, Interior Health, obviously, and then some of the community and industry representative groups that can help actually do projects in the watershed. So the BC Cattlemen's Association, they run some great off-stream watering programs and fencing. The sportsmen's associations can get us in touch with that ATV side-by-side community. And in the middle, we have the district and St. Pinkton Indian Band. Because there is the reserve there, and because St. Pinkton does some great programs like wildfire management that may help the district keep their treatment plants safe and their intake safe, and also because any projects on unceded territory in the environment related to water, for example, you do want to, if you want to, in the UNDRIP spirit, free, prior, and informed consent. Yeah, lots of good reasons to have them involved there. Yeah, I think I only have one last slide. I've been ripping through this. So on this, I just gave a snapshot of what some of the actions may look like at the end of the day. So I think I have 6 here, and you can kind of see it's actually quite a similar shape to the multiple berry approach. So maybe we can actually, at the end of the day, kind of show where those fit. But the categories that we seem to think made sense, where we could take the 18 individual ones and make it into something a little bit easier to manage in these bite-sized chunks. So you have your planning tools, right? So you have your bylaws and your OCPs. You can do some cool things with that. The public awareness and engagement, there's a whole bunch of things you want to do because those are the folks that are in your landscape. Natural assets and green infrastructure, this would involve wildfire management or riparian area, work there, off-stream watering, that kind of thing, and perhaps some fencing and some signage. And then I think we've probably talked about monitoring, making sure we can predict any changes in climate change that may change what's in our source water to make sure our treatment plant can manage that, or yeah, just making sure we are confident there's nothing that's going to surprise us. And for any hazards that you can't manage, they're out of kind of your control, then you want to use your emergency planning toolbox, right? So that's protecting flood, fire, drought, things that you're all quite familiar with. So just making sure that we know all we need to know in our emergency response plan there. Yeah, so that was a super, super quick recap on the plan. As far as timeline, it definitely depends on the co-partnership with St. Pinkton and if they would like to do anything a little bit different. I have some kind of neat ideas to indigenize, for example, on the TAC. We could add an elder and a youth. That would be an example of using the Ford Food Chiefs story there. Yeah, so in general, we have a plan for all of this to happen in the spring and the fall mostly. Summer's tricky to get people together with a draft report next spring is what we had planned. Let's see how we're doing there, Jeremy, or Jeremy through Mayor.
That's good. I think we can take questions if, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Marta. Council, any questions? Councillor Barkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Slide 4, you speak about the what our water treatment plant can do and can't do. It doesn't deal with nitrates. What are and I presume phosphates? What is the level of nitrates and phosphates from our outfall then? And
yeah, through Mayor to Councillor. Do I just respond? Sorry, not sure. Hard to see. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so there's actually very little agriculture in the Trout Creek watershed, which is actually quite surprising compared to the rest of, yeah, the Valley Bottom. So it's just a small portion in Meadow Valley and Falder there. So the nitrates, from what I remember reviewing the previous report, is very low right now. The bigger concern would be algae in the headwater dams. So that is something we would want to wrap our head around a little bit more, making sure we are taking the samples and doing the algae classification to see if it's the good kind or the bad kind of algae. I'm a hydrogeologist, not a limnologist. But yeah, that is part. We do have some budget to do some mini technical studies, and if not, we will just do the monitoring program, and that can be one of the actions is to look into algae.
follow up? Would the algae, I've never heard that was a concern before in headwaters. I mean, it's a long distance over clear running water from headwaters down to the treatment plant. Would there be sort of any natural cleaning of the water or anything through that?
Through Mayor, yeah. So I don't think it's going to be a huge problem, but it's definitely something to look at to make sure it's not. And before we can answer that, we do need to make sure we're taking the right amount of samples. It is an emerging issue and it's a big deal for lakes in the valley bottoms. For example, there's some blue-green algae blooms in Wood Lake, I think, and Lytton had a challenge with that. It was not the toxic kind, but you do still have to do a whole bunch of sampling and calm interior health down and your public because it's quite scary looking, the green, neon green color. So it's definitely something, if you do have any sort of storage, you definitely want to take a look at that and make sure you have a monitoring program in place to have the evidence to support any discussions with interior health.
One more follow-up. Okay.
Well, there's a resort and private residences or cottages around Headwaters Lake. Is there going to be a way to, say, identify faulty septic systems that are contaminating the lake, which would contribute towards the algae problem, I suppose, if they...
Is the nod mean yes?
Okay, you just want me to jump in. Some other councils want me to go through the mayor in case staff want to take it. So yes, those have been mentioned. Thank you for those in the assessment. And so that would be part of formalizing that program, would be around what do we need to learn more information about these, or is it so dilute that's maybe a lesser priority? So that is what the TAC as a group do together. Is one thing that's so good about source protection plans is there are lots of kind of scary things out there, but how do you rank them? So there is a process that we all agree on between likelihood of consequence and magnitude of occurrence. Let me make sure I got that right. Likelihood of occurrence and magnitude of consequence, and then together, then you can rank the risk. So perhaps sewage for your area, in other areas, it's a really important risk, but I think maybe because there's so few, I would make a guess that that would be a lower risk ranking by the time we do that, that matrix.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very kindly, Mayor. Marta, I don't know if this question would go to you or to our staff, but in terms of representatives for TAC, you were speaking about Penticton, but it's the Penticton Indian Band, or perhaps the West Bank First Nation Alliance that we would be dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Penticton is Penticton Indian Band. I was just using the word that is on their website, and if you go to firstvoices.ca, they say it's Penticton.
That's fine, Marta. It's okay. I'm going to ask if I might add another option or another group for the TAC, and that would be the Trail of the Okanagan.
Okay.
There's a group that's been going for 10 years or so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marta.
Councillor Trainer.
Hi, Marta. I just have 3 quick questions for you. The first one is related to the algae. What is the cause of that? Like, is it climate change? Is it, less rain? Is that what's causing this? Or are we just more aware of it now?
Yes, all of the above, probably. Hotter weather. The algae is naturally occurring. So it probably only affected, the valley bottom lakes where it's warmer and smaller lakes. But yeah, we are seeing it occur in more. And so it's definitely something, probably won't be an emerging issue for you guys for a long time. But yeah, all of the above: changes in land use, more nutrients, warmer temperatures, and more drought, or more longer summers and shorter winters.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. And then in terms of forestry and mining in our watershed, that I guess would be represented under the Ministry of Land, Water and Resource if they were part of the group. Yeah, okay.
Yes, Ministry of Forests, I think, is still Ministry of Forests. So the plan was to I didn't have every single one on there. The plan is to communicate directly to some of the forestry companies to see if they would like to be part of this process.
Okay, I think that that's really important. And then my last question is just about forest fires. I think that that's one of the biggest, probably the biggest risk that we have. How are they going to be represented? And I guess, and then just a side question, does ash affect the water quality?
Very great questions. Yes, those, yes, wildfires do affect water quality and quantity. And we're learning so fast because we are just starting to see the effect post-fire. And so our hydrologist with the Ministry of Forests, Sheena, is very busy trying to study that. And so that's a great observation. So I don't know their particulars on ash. Have to get back to you on that one. But wildfires was in the 18 preliminary recommendations, and it'll definitely be one of the programs I think that will fit under natural assets and natural infrastructure, green infrastructure, and that would be the wildfire management, which would be a good reason to bring St. Pinkton in because they do some really neat stuff there.
Councillor Van
Thank you. Just a comment, if I may. Thank you for your presentation, and I'm grateful to see that you've included the Sportsmen's Association and the BC Cattlemen's Association in the TAC, possibly in the committee. I know the Sportsmen's Association does a lot of great work in our backcountry with trail cameras, keeping an eye on highly sensitive areas, direct links to the CAOs if people are tearing up these wetlands with their, 4x4s or ATVs or what have you. But the BC Cattlemen's Association has done some very innovative work, even out in the back of Garnet Valley with electric fences, keeping cattle out of highly sensitive wetlands and using solar pumps to put water in troughs so the cattle aren't in the wetlands, and using the cattle for fire mitigation. Highly intensive grazing closer to the communities, and then in the late spring, fall months, moving them up to higher elevations. But there's a lot of really good work that's been done, and with the electric fences, they're able to move them closer to populated areas to mitigate some of that high grasses. But thank you for including those. Thank you.
Thank you. Just have a couple questions myself. So does the Source Water Protection Plan also, is it there to support environmental flows, or is it focused just mainly on the water quality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the district, it can do both, but you have the water use plan, so that has the quantity component already in that. But it would be a good idea to look at the two and see if any of the programs will help with both. For example, riparian and wildfire management, those would definitely link with both.
Okay, I did speak with Chief Gabriel from the PIB last week briefly about the plan, what we're doing here, and their interest in participating. I think he was interested in principle. Obviously, we'll have to have more talks with him. But I think one of the PIB's interests will be below the intake. I know this is all above the intake for us. That's our concern, but their interest is mainly the mouth of the creek into the lake. And so I guess, that might be something up for discussion as we sit down with them and figure out what it looks like. And I also, the CAO and I met with Gorman Brothers last year sometime, last fall, I believe. So Gorman Brothers is the most active forestry company in the watershed. And they were very supportive of this process, and I don't think there'll be any trouble having them involved in the TAG. Last year at UBCM, we met with the province. One of my concerns is as all of us municipalities around the province are setting up these tax, and we're all drawing on the provincial government to participate them. You know, what is their capacity to be able to participate on all these different tax that are being set up around the province? And Finn Donnelly, the Minister of State, or the Parliamentary Secretary to Nathan Cullen, did write us back. We should get you a copy of that correspondence if already, but it might be worth following up because they're clearly aware of that issue, and it's just one of these things that could set us back if the province isn't moving along with us. So those are just kind of my concerns, or what I'm aware of what's happening out there. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. On the sportsmen's and the BC cattlemen's, the idea hopefully is that the district is offering up to co-lead this project, but by no means do you need to do all of the actions. And so in that way, it's not really under the district's core, you don't own the infrastructure of the watershed and all that. So yeah, that's the idea, is that you are offering to kind of facilitate the conversations, but hopefully community groups and industry and hopefully provincial partners can actually do the programs.
Okay, Council, if there's no more questions, Councillor Valentine?
I'll bring forward the staff recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
So that's to proceed with the source water protection plan?
Yes.
Councillor Peak, second. Any further discussion? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to say I can see the value in this project, in this program, in better understanding our watershed and protecting the safety of our drinking water here in Summerland. And so, it's a big project, but I can see the value in that, and it's a long-term asset management just project that I think is valuable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That's none opposed. That carries. Okay, so why don't we take a little break? 2:30? Yeah. 7, Rotary Sunday Market, manager procurement. Councillor Valentin?
May I excuse myself? I have a pecuniary interest in this one. Thank you.
Okay, we'll let you know when we're back.
So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to discuss considering an amendment to the Summerland Rotary Club's license of occupation for the Summerland Sunday Market on Main Street. In 2023, Council approved the current license of occupation, which allows for the license to be renewed for up to 2 additional market seasons, so for 2024 and 2025. Typically, the corporate officer would have authority to sign the amendment without bringing it back to Council. But in this case, the Rotary Club has requested some material changes to the license, so we're bringing it back to Council for consideration. They've requested an extension to the market season so that the market can begin 1 week earlier and conclude 2 weeks later. So it would start 1 week later, the second last Sunday in June, and on the Thanksgiving Sunday. They've also requested that the footprint for the market be expanded half a block to the east. So instead of ending at Kelly Avenue, it would end at the crosswalk at Lordco. The road closure permit for the extended footprint has already been reviewed and approved by staff, and the fire department has provided their consent for the extension. And that concludes my report. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Betts?
Sorry, just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, should I be stepping out from this decision as well? Because I am a vendor at the market. I hadn't thought about that before now.
It's your decision, not mine. So if you feel that you can't be objective about this, then
I think I can, but I don't want there to be any misconception. So I, like Mr. Van Helfen, I'll step away.
And I hope nobody else is involved in this market, or else we don't have a quorum. Councillor Peak.
I'm not selling anything this year. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So if I may, Dana, then there's no problem with the extension of the road closure in terms of our department?
Through the mayor, correct. There's no issue with the expanded footprint.
Okay. If I might make an observation, I think that the Sunday market is a wonderful addition to our community. And the fact that the weather has been so good that we want to take it past Thanksgiving, I think that's great. And a week earlier, it just works out fine. I have no difficulty with this whatsoever.
Okay, so you want to bring forward the motion?
I will.
Okay, seconder, please. Councillor Trainer, any discussion? Yeah, I think this is going to be well received in the community. So, good. Call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. Councillor back the yeah, if you're involved in Action Fest, you can just stay out there. So okay, 7.8 Action Fest. Corporate officer.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So the Action Fest is scheduled to be held in Memorial Park from May 31st to June 2nd, 2024. The event organizers have applied to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for a special events permit to provide beverage gardens for the event. The branch requires that applicants of the permit must obtain written permission from the local governing authority for the permit if the event is planned to be held on land or premises owned by a municipal government. As part of the application for the permit, the event organizer is required to submit a site plan and security plan. The area that liquor will be served must be surrounded by a barrier that will limit the sale, service, and consumption of liquor to that area. The event organizers have stated that security will be provided pursuant to the Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch regulations, and that 2 security guards will be located at the entrance to check identification, and that 1 security guard per 100 attendees will be patrolling the gardens throughout the duration of the event. The gardens will be open and providing service for the following times: Friday from 5 to 10 p.m., Saturday from 11 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Before council is a resolution to support Action Fest's application to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Trainer?
I'll bring this one forward. I just had a quick question for our corporate officer. We haven't had any issues with this beverage garden before, have we?
Through the mayor to Councillor Trainer, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, I'll bring this forward.
Okay, seconder, please. Councillor Van Elfen, any discussion? Councillor Betts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to note that Action Fest is a long-standing, successful festival that happens in our community, kind of launches the summer season here in Summerland, and I'm happy to support them and earning money in the different ways that they can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peak?
We were lucky enough to have a member come forward and speak about the changes that they had done last year. And having the dance in the park and whatever was really a benefit. I think that it made it even more festive. So we're very lucky to have them. It's a very dedicated group of people.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Not opposed. That carries. 7.9, delegation application appeal. Corporate officer.
Thank you again, Mayor Holmes. In accordance with the council procedure bylaw, an applicant of a delegation that was previously denied is applying to council appealing the decision to deny their presentation. The delegation information has been provided to council and is included as part of the agenda package for consideration. Should council allow the delegation to proceed, the delegation will be scheduled for the May 21st, 2024 regular afternoon council meeting. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Discussion? Councillor Peak?
Yes, I was interested in the fact that this person had brought forward their opportunity. I do understand that we have other opportunities for people to speak, but I don't see any particular occasion that we shouldn't have this one come forward. If there were questions around what may or may not be an organization, I think that we are interested in hearing from the public, and I think that this opportunity should be afforded.
Councillor Chair?
Sorry. CEO, how come this application was initially turned down again? Was it related to policy that we have or?
Thank you, and through the mayor. You'll notice there's a little bit of information in your package, back to Mr. Bessler. Our practice has been that we reserve the time for delegations for groups and associations of that ilk and comments from individuals or small groups of individuals in the public comment opportunity.
Councillor Bark?
Well, we have a public comment opportunity at the end of meetings, right? So if individuals want to speak at that time, they're limited to 2 minutes. So maybe we should move that opportunity to speaking to before council meetings as a delegation. Then they don't have to wait through the whole meeting in order to have, if they want to, address the council on something.
Yeah, I think that's sounds good to me. I mean, there's no question the CAO has followed our past practice, but I've always found that it's a pretty gray area between what's an organization and a group and what's an individual. It's a judgment call, and we'll be reviewing our procedure bylaw anyway because of Bill 44, and that'll be coming to us fairly soon. Is that correct, Corporate Officer? Yeah. So, maybe why don't we just open up delegations to anybody, any member of the public who applies to be one. And then I'd really say, why do we need the public comment period at the end if you just have everybody being a delegate? Councillor Barkwell.
Unless somebody else wants to speak to this first, because I've already spoken on I was just saying, I remember before I was on council, there was been things I might wanted to talk about, but you never knew whether a council meeting was going to be 1 hour or 3 hours, and to sit through a whole council meeting with a whole pile of things that weren't of much interest annoyed me at that time. So I can really see the idea of moving that session and opening up delegations to everybody and everything, but I guess it would require, several policy rewrites and such, and might take some time. So maybe that's another discussion that we should have when we do these changes. So in the meantime, I in anticipation that that's the route we might go on, I could support council can ignore policy at any time, change policy at any time, not follow policy, make new policy, all these things. And along those lines, even though this one doesn't really fit our policy, I could support the hearing the presentation and with the consideration that we'll be reviewing the whole policy.
Okay, anyone else?
I agree with what Councillor Barkle said. I think that we do need to, and we will be looking at our public engagement again, just to make it more clear so that both the public and groups and organizations and individuals know when they can speak and have themselves heard. So I'll support listening to the applicant, and then coming back and having a bigger discussion about how we're going to reorganize this so that it's clear for everybody.
Okay, so let's deal with the appeal first. Would we need a motion someone want to bring forward a motion to accept Mr. Bessler's appeal? Councillor Peak?
I will do that motion, that the delegation application would be able to come forward for the May 21st, 2024 meeting.
Okay, just as it says on the screen. Mr. Bessler, that works for you? And have a seconder? Councillor Trainer, all in favor? Carries. And do you need a motion for any direction for what needs to be in the procedure bylaw review?
Yes, we're just in the beginning stages of drafting amendments, so I would prefer to draft them as council sees, so that it takes less back and forth time to get it right.
Okay, Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, adding to this conversation, one thought I have would be, okay, if we're accepting individuals and groups and organizations at delegation time, that we either look at the allotted amount of time that we will accept speakers per meeting and limit that to, say, either 5 minutes per speaker and up to 15 minutes, or maybe reduce that to 3 minutes per speaker and take, again, up to 15 minutes, just to kind of manage the amount of time and speakers coming. I assume then would all speakers need to be signed up in advance to come as a delegation and provide presentation slides?
I don't think they have to provide slides, but if they don't want to, but yeah.
Yeah, so through the mayor, just to provide a bit of clarification on how delegations work. So the Monday prior to the meeting is our delegation deadline. So anyone coming as a delegation would have to register by that time. And if they had presentation materials, they would need to be submitted by then to be included on the agenda. So we wouldn't be accepting delegations, and we don't accept delegations in between that Tuesday to Tuesday time period. So it is a bit different in the public comment opportunity. People can register right up until the meeting. They can just come and appear. We wouldn't be accepting those late delegations. So it would be a bit more onus on a resident to speak to council.
Which I think is fair, but as long as we keep the public comment for agenda items, because that's the ones that people will come out for, that will want to comment on more in a more spontaneous way. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through to our corporate officer, with the public comment period at the beginning with Bill 44, how is that going to change?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Elpen. So similar to kind of what we have now, we'll just have to be a bit more cognizant. We wouldn't be allowed to have any residents either in a delegation or in a public comment opportunity speaking to anything that now is no longer permitted, and we don't want to hold I can't think of the right word, but we don't essentially want to hold public hearings through the public comment opportunity because we're not actually permitted to hold public hearings anymore.
But we can control that by how we create the agenda, and that you can't comment on this section because that's statutory. You can't comment on it, and it would just be a matter of me or the chair controlling that, correct?
Correct. And then if we did receive a delegation request, and we do try to ask, most delegations, we do know what they're coming for. Public comment opportunity is the one where we don't have as much control over it. We don't know what people are speaking to. So we would be able to control it at a staff level that way as well.
Okay. Not sure who's first, Councillor Peak and then Barco.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Mayor. No, I think the idea of reviewing how we're doing that's a good idea. I'd like to suggest, having worked for many, many years in this kind of situation, that 3 minutes would be a good time for people to be able to speak, and whether it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, and that it's on the topics within the agenda, are all things that I see being sensible in terms of the business meeting that we need to work forward. I make note of the fact that before, when I was on council, and it wouldn't matter, Bill 44 may make it more apparent, but we used to highlight in yellow the agenda items that would not be referenced that people couldn't speak to because they were certain planning items. And I think if we went back to that, it might be more identifiable. So that's just a suggestion.
Okay. Councillor Barco.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Peak. Either highlight the ones you can or highlight the ones you can't speak to in yellow, like it was done when it first came out. I think that 3 minutes is rather limiting for delegations. We have lots of delegations that go much longer than that, good or bad. But just right now, we need a motion to direct staff to do a certain review with certain goals in mind. Is that what we're sort of looking forward? And yes, I see a nod there. So I'll put forward a motion that staff prepare a report on reviewing our council procedure bylaw to take the public comment period from the end of the meeting to the beginning of the meeting as delegations, and that they be registered. And was there another aspect to that? And we'll have to talk about the time limits, but that's the basic outline of it, that presentations on topics that are not on the agenda all become delegations. Does that work?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Bark. Well, that's a good start. Hearing a little bit of a difference in terms of should we have a time limit or maybe 3 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes, or should we not? One thing that we have noticed too is there's been a lot of delegation requests lately. I think just for this meeting alone, there was 3 or 4. It turned out it was just 1 because of timing issues on the delegates part, but we might also want to turn our mind if we're even broadening it more, which is what I'm hearing. If we maybe think about how many times in a year someone can be, or an organization can be a delegate as part of the criteria, if we don't want to limit the amount of time each time in terms of speaking.
Yeah, well, we certainly have to figure out the time part of it. I know, like, we have Unisys coming to our next meeting again, so, but Councillor P.
Thank you very kindly. That reminded me what the CAO was speaking to. The other thing you can do, you can say, well, we'll only, on any given business meeting, we'll only have 5 delegations or whatever it is. And that works out to a certain number of minutes, and it may be 20 minutes. It could be whatever.
Councillor Train.
So just to clarify, then we would have a section on delegations, and that would either be 3 to 5 minutes, whatever we decide. And then we would have a public comment period in which case I think the 2 minutes is still good for highlighted items that people can speak to. Is that what you're, just to clarify? Okay. And then, so what we need to determine then is how many times, if we decide to limit the delegations per year, and then their times. And that could come back in a report, different options. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that enough to go with, corporate officer? Right. Councillor Betts.
Thank you. So just a question, so the frequency of a delegation's kind of time, the number of times they can come a year, would that be something we would discuss in the future then when we kind of hammer this out a little bit further? Because I can see delegations, I mean, that most organizations might only come one time per year, right? So I can see that. I just don't know where this would.
Well, we could either provide staff direction now, or else we could just wait to see what staff come back with in terms of options in the report. Councillor Peak.
I'd like to give the staff an opportunity to take a look at what the options could be, and we can have a further discussion when they come back with those options.
Yeah, it'd be useful to know what other municipalities do. Councillor Bell.
He Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe staff can look at what best practices are in other communities and see how that's working for them. Because I know a lot of communities have removed the public comment period totally. So maybe we can look at what's working and what's not working. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a draft resolution there. Somebody want to bring that forward? Councillor Barkwell, seconder. Councillor Peak, any further discussion? Councillor Betts.
Thank you. I guess for me, my hesitation at this point is that we're specifically kind of narrowing it down. The second part saying that to remove the second public comment opportunity to allow residents to address council on any matter of local government interest as a delegation. But my hesitation here would be that if we're waiting to see maybe what some of the best practices are in surrounding communities, I would like to see a presentation of what those options are before approving the second part of this motion.
Through the mayor to Councillor Betts and council in general, I think what we'll do with this direction is at the next meeting, we will bring back a report with this and what a draft amendment would look like. And we'll provide options to council. Council can give the bylaw the first 3 readings. Council can give like further direction to staff. And as part of that report, we will look at kind of what our current practice is. We'll review what the province has put out for best practice for council procedure bylaws. We'll look at all of our neighboring communities and see what's going on there. So it's not set in stone. We'll bring back a draft amendment, but council at that time actually seeing it in front of them can then make further amendments as you wish.
Word? Sure. Okay. Any other comments, discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Items removed from the consent agenda, letters I and J. Councillor Betts. So the first one, we'll do I. That's the response to the letter I wrote to the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission.
Yep, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring attention that we did receive this this response from our the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General and Deputy Premier Mike Farnsworth that they are continuing the discussion with the Alberta government and the Ministry of Red Tape Reduction to try and resolve the problem of how Alberta has ceased accepting or allowing our small wineries to sell direct to consumer in Alberta. That program, and that's really affecting a lot of our small Summerland wineries and businesses. And I just think it's important that we continue to pay attention to this issue. And I wanted to note that we received this letter in response to yours. So thank you for continuing on that correspondence.
Okay, thank you. And the next one. That's SHAPE.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one, I just thought I'd bring it to our community's attention. It's called, it's from the Foundry in Penticton, and it's starting a new community for our young people called SAGE, which is Snacks, Art, Games, and Events for youth age 12 to 18 here in Summerland, and somewhat replacing the Sadie environment that the kids, our teens and youth could go and find a safe and welcoming space. Right now, they are gathering at the library every second Tuesday here in Summerland. The next one being April 30th, and that's between 3 and 5 p.m. I just thought it'd be nice for our young people to know that there's an opportunity to gather.
Okay, thank you. So we just need to receive those two letters. Motion to receive, Councillor Peak, Councillor Trainer. Any discussion on either of those matters? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Public comment opportunity, 2 minutes per speaker.
Hi, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at the next council meeting as a delegation. I sincerely appreciate that. Regarding the current council procedures bylaw, in my view, everything is working good. The 2 minutes to speak to agenda items at the beginning provides adequate time. The 2 minutes at the end of the council meeting provides people the opportunity to speak, whether it's something that wasn't on the agenda or it's something that they observed during the council meeting. And the 5 minutes for the delegation, you need to apply with an application form at least a week in advance. So it is a different process. And in my view, I think everything was working fine. If I was approved like everyone else, this wouldn't be even discussed. So in my view, everything is working good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
So I just wanted to set the record straight on the question on the petition. So with the petition that we had opportunity to compare with the Dog Owners Association, it's utilizing the exact same platform. So I mentioned that we have received 1,844 signatures versus the Dog Owners Association 577 signatures. What is visible to the public is also the comments that are on the petition, and each comment can actually be seen who made the comment. So we compare the comments on our petition, Restore Peach Orchard Park, and 78.2% of the comments were made by Summerlanders, versus the Dog Owner Association received 50% of the comments from Summerland residents. So I think that speaks volume, and I hope this really brings it home of who is speaking and who is taking the time and the effort to restore the Peach Orchard Park, and I trust that this will be taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come up. We just need you to turn on the mic there and maybe just state your name and address.
Okay, yes, I'm Willie Petrus. I just want to follow up with what Lisa said and what was talked about earlier as far as the petition. We worked very, very hard for the petition. And this is not just some wild around the world kind of a thing. We made posters, we brought them all around town. Lisa and I, we walked up and down, we talked to business owners, we've talked to people at the park. And this petition that we have is real, and we worked for it. And I just felt that earlier it seemed like maybe it was a bit dismissed, and I would like you to know how hard we worked for those numbers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Good afternoon, Council. Terry Sawchuk, Downton Avenue, Mayor and Council, thank you. I'd just like to bring to your attention Facebook comment that was made by the South Summerland Dog Owners Association. This was in February 12th, 2020, regarding the dog park. It states, "This is where Lori Morgan, manager of Parks and Recreation Department and city staff consultant, recommend a dog park. This area of the field has had water problems and issues for more than 15 years, for 6 months or more of the year. And they want us dog owners to play and walk and socialize our dogs in this mess. To be frank, this is rather disgusting and insulting, and to them even suggest this opinion. You can't walk on this land without sinking. Not to mention for a dog park, what a mess." I witnessed this weekend during the rainstorm that we had on Saturday. About 5 o'clock, there was standing puddles everywhere. There was no dogs in the park. They were outside the park where the volleyball are throwing the dogs because it was dry. They could run and play there. So what has changed from 2020 to now? The water table's still the same. You're going to have the same issue. So I really think it's a bad decision to keep the park there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I'd like to have a resolution to close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 91C, E, G, and I of the Community Charter. Councillor Alphen, Councillor Betts, all in favor?